up, Kryptonians? Welcome to my spoiler video for Spider-Man Far From Home. It has been, I think, exactly 2 weeks since Spider-Man Far From Home came out, which means it's time to talk spoilers. Technically, I could have done this a week ago, but I decided to wait, gather my thoughts on it, because my thoughts have been slightly tweaked since the first time I saw it. I've seen the movie about 2 times since then. I've thought about it, I've meditated, I've marinated on the shit, and while I still think the movie is a positive step in the right direction for Spider-Man, and while I still really like it, and I still give it a positive rating, I think I would tweak it now to maybe not being Superman Prime, but instead putting it in the Silver Age for Man of Steel, which still good. My opinions on the movie haven't drastically changed to the point that I still don't think it's a damn good movie, but I also don't think it deserves my highest rating after thinking about it a little bit. So am I allowed to tweak and change reviews and thoughts and ratings on this channel? I mean, I should be able to. You know, what am I thinking? What am I talking about? It's my channel. I can do whatever the fuck I want, pretty much. Hey, if I decided one day to come in here and shoot a video of me painting a Superman tattoo on my ball sack, you guys would have to shut up and take it, wouldn't you? Granted, that would probably be the end of the channel if I decided to do that, but I don't know. I'm crazy enough to do that, so we'll see how it goes one day. Maybe one day when I hit 1 million subs or something. Who knows? Spider-Man Far From Home, yada yada yada. I'm going to put it in the Silver Age for Man of Steel. Again, welcome to the spoiler video. If you haven't seen Spider-Man Far From Home, let's keep it 100. You probably aren't going to see it at this point. I just feel like it's been 2 weeks. You probably would have seen it by now, which means you probably don't give an ounce of a motherfuck about spoilers, in which case, welcome to the video. If you have seen Spider-Man Far From Home, you've already processed it. You've probably already seen a bunch of other spoiler videos on the internet, so welcome. So I'm pretty much talking to the same group of people here. To start off this spoiler video, we should talk about Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, and how he was portrayed in this movie. It seems like a good starting point. He is the star of the show. I was kind of lukewarm on Peter Parker and his portrayal in Homecoming. I mean, I kind of appreciated it for what it was and what the MCU was trying to establish with him. I liked how he was portrayed in Civil War a lot better, especially from a badass standpoint. Also, I thought that they relied a little bit too much on Tony Stark and the Avengers as a crutch to build his character in Homecoming. Whereas in this movie, I feel like his character arc doesn't just revolve around Tony. And now kind of that I've seen both movies and I can process where they're taking this Spider-Man, I feel like he's one step closer to growing out of Iron Man's shadow and becoming his own Spider-Man. In fact, by the end of this movie, he feels a lot more confident and assertive as Spider-Man. He feels like his own hero. A lot of this movie deals with the idea of losing somebody like Tony Stark, what that means for the world and what it personally means for Peter. Like it or not, hate it or not, and definitely there are things to hate about this, he was Peter's mentor. Not the best mentor in the world, but still a mentor. I gotta wonder how that's gonna affect Peter, and at the same time, Peter is a 16-year-old kid. He doesn't want the entire world of responsibility on him yet. The dude wants to flirt with girls, he wants to go hang out with his friends, he doesn't always want to be focused on hero shit. That is 110% relatable. So in this movie, his main goal is to actually go to Europe and hang out with his friends, kick back, ignore the hero shit for a while, and tell MJ how he feels. First movie, she really just popped in and out of the story, and she said like one-liners, and she really didn't become important until the last scene of the movie. This movie, she feels a lot more important, a lot more ingrained as a character. She straddles the line between being a damsel in distress, but also being strong enough to take care of herself if the situation calls for it. She's the perfect blend of sarcastic and snarky, but at the same time depressed and kind of damaged and broken. In other words, she's the perfect version of a teenage girl, so that this makes perfect sense to me. One of my favorite moments in the movie is when Peter and MJ and the rest of his classmates go to the opera, and Peter really wants to sit next to MJ because he really likes MJ, and MJ wants to save a seat for him, but then he's called off to Prague to deal with Quentin Beck and the elementals and stuff. The look on his face when he looks back at Zendaya, it's perfect to me. That is Spider-Man right there. That is being torn between your responsibilities and that ass. And who hasn't had that look on their face before? I remember there was this one time where there's this girl that got off of work early and then she invited me over to her house to like watch Netflix or some shit, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna get the butt cheeks. This is a good day for me. Except I remember that I had already committed to covering someone's shift at my job. So one of the few times in life where you could see my brain and my heart Godzilla King Konging each other. I legit think that if you had taken a look at me at that moment, I would look like I was having a stroke. One of the other things that is a big improvement in this movie is the Spider-Man action. Spider-Man has always had these huge, bombastic, badass action sequences that really showcase what makes Spider-Man special, and in this movie I feel like we got more of those sequences. I do wish that they had kept the action sequence from the beginning of the movie when he's in New York and he's in his iron spider suit and he's fighting those criminals in that restaurant. I feel like that that action sequence actually could have lended some to the first part of the movie. It could have added a little bit more excitement to it. Honestly, up until you get to Europe and the story actually kicks in, it kind of feels like another high school comedy, and it's okay. Like, there's some funny parts in it, but overall it's kind of been there, done that. The sequence between him and Mysterio in the parking garage, I mean, that's one of my favorite sequences of all time in any Spider-Man movie. Feels like at times it was ripped right off of the pages of a comic book. At times it feels like Batman in the Arkham games when he goes up against Scarecrow and his fear toxin. It was eggs on a tit. It was beautiful. It was glorious. The creepy image of Iron Man coming out of the grave and chasing after Peter. I mean, come on, this is peak cinema we're talking about. And obviously the sequence at the end with the drones, I like the fact that Peter kind of had to adjust on the fly and figure things out. Not everything was laid out perfectly for him. Not only did he get to tweak and design his own suit, but during the fight with the drones at the end, he loses his web shooter. So he has to try to figure out a way to get up to Quentin Beck on his own, and he has to be innovative. He creates a makeshift shield. He creates this other thing that causes something to blow up. Yep, that's my Spider-Man, thinking and improvising on the fly. I like it. This is the Spider-Man that I wanted to see. Let's talk about Mysterio for a second, because Jake Gyllenhaal, I have such a mixed reaction to him in this movie after seeing it a couple times. On the one hand, I love Jake Gyllenhaal as an actor. He's one of my favorite actors working today, and I thought from a portrayal standpoint, from an acting standpoint, he did the character of Mysterio justice. He's just as arrogant and self-centered and kind of unhinged in an unhealthy way. Although, is there a healthy way to be unhinged? I don't know. You guys tell me. When it comes to his motivation, could have done without it, honestly. I feel like this is a problem that Marvel has had in general, is that in a lot of their movies, especially involving Spider-Man, they have to build entire plots and entire villains based off of Iron Man and his decisions. In general, the MCU has been struggling to get out from under the shadow of Iron Man for a while, and it's no exception in these Spider-Man movies. I didn't really care for Mysterio's motivation in this movie. Somehow, back in the day, when Tony did his barf thing in Civil War, it was actually stolen from Quentin Beck with his hologram technology. Not only that, but Tony Stark fired him because reasons, and I think this is actually my biggest problem with it, is that there's no balance to the story. We only get Quentin Beck's side of things. The only thing he says is that Tony fires him because he was unstable. Okay, what the hell does that mean? Tony's not here to defend himself or to explain it, so we have to take Quentin Beck's word for it, and that's just not enough. It is in this big exposition dump of a scene, but it's just not enough, and it's not enough for me to really feel that invested in his motivations. I see where they're taking this Spider-Man. I think hopefully they're building him up, building his arc through these movies so that he can step out of the shadow of Iron Man and become his own man. At the same time, it just was kind of irritating in this movie to see yet another villain being influenced by something Tony did or said in the past. I just feel like at this point, I've seen that, done that. Like, it's been done to death at this point, and I don't really need to see this going forward. And there are a couple of things about this version of Spider-Man that are always going to piss me off as a longtime Spider-Man fan. For one thing, the disrespect to Uncle Ben. I'm sorry, I just don't get it. We know for a fact that Uncle Ben does exist in this universe. We know for a fact that he has already passed away in this universe. What we don't know is how much he actually meant to Peter. Uncle Ben is such a huge part of the Spider-Man mythology. He's such a huge part of what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. And I get it, they're probably trying to turn Tony into Uncle Ben, but does that mean that Uncle Ben didn't matter? Does that mean he had no impact whatsoever on Peter being a hero? They have reduced Uncle Ben in these movies to an Easter egg. Like in this movie, the only mention of Uncle Ben, you never get mentioned by name. The only thing that they give you is they give you a bag with your initials on it. I mean, come on, man, that is weak sauce. I don't need to see the whole origin over again, people. I don't need to see his death. All I need to know is, did he matter to Peter or not? Is his presence felt? I don't feel Uncle Ben's presence. I feel like that's one of my least favorite things about this adaptation of Spider-Man. I've always preferred the stories that focus on Uncle Ben, and if they don't focus on Uncle Ben, they at least make him feel like he matters, even if they don't go out of their way to reference him all the time. Take the Spider-Man game for PS4 that came out last year. Uncle Ben is mentioned periodically throughout the movie, but he never feels like he overshadows the story. And he's referenced, but it's not over the top to the point where you're like,
oh my god, they're taking us through the damn origin again.
Other little things like the fact that they've reduced Aunt May to kind of just being the hot aunt and she's just there for comic relief now, as opposed to actually having some semblance of emotion or depth behind her relationship with Peter. Kind of skipped all over her reaction to him being Spider-Man, and now she's like just perfectly cool with it. There's just no real scenes of any kind of emotion between them, especially in this movie. We did finally, thankfully, get a swinging scene of Spider-Man swinging through New York. I'm sorry, if you have played any of the Spider-Man games, if you've watched any of the Spider-Man movies, you know that Spider-Man swinging through New York is like the biggest thing. It's like one of the things that can make the movie. I like the scene where he's swinging through and then he takes a selfie. It did remind me of Spider-Man from PS4 last year, how you could just swing and you could just create selfies and you could just do that kind of thing. It was kind of fun to see that. It's kind of fresh and intriguing that they take Spider-Man and they send him to Europe in his second movie, and now at the end of the movie they have his identity revealed. This is kind of early for Spider-Man to be unmasked. He's unmasked at age 16, and now this opens up a whole world of possibilities as to how they're gonna deal with this shit. In the comics, I mean, there was some convoluted deals that they made with Mephisto to keep his identity secret. Is Doctor Strange gonna take the place of Mephisto, or are they gonna bring Mephisto in? Or are they just gonna have the Skrulls shapeshift into Spider-Man and that's gonna be the way that they fix it? Or are they gonna keep things simple and just have Pepper Potts leak all of Quentin Beck's information to the public? I mean, he did work for Stark, right? So his records should be public knowledge, so just leak them out there, and then everybody will know that he's lying, and then hey, there's no need to protect Peter's identity. Overall, I felt like Far From Home was a step in the right direction. There's a lot of great scenes, a lot of great sequences in this movie. I do think that this is probably the last movie I'm going to tolerate an Iron Man-centric villain and plotline. I do want some of the story writing to be a little bit more consistent, like the scene in the bar with Quentin where Peter and him are talking. It was a weird scene to me, not just because it was obviously a fake scene that was staged by Quentin Beck, but also because Peter, for some reason, in this scene doesn't care about his secret identity. Also, the Edith glasses, which were like an easy button for knowing everybody's personal information and their text messages and stuff, for some reason couldn't pick up the fact that this was a hologram. Tighten up some of the story writing, and if they take it in an interesting direction that doesn't involve Tony Stark and something that he did in the past that we didn't know about, I'd appreciate that. As far as villains for the next movie, I'd love to see Kraven, I'd love to see Chameleon. There was a character in this movie named Dimitri, so you know, maybe we could see Kraven and Chameleon in the next movie. Who knows? Love the JJ cameo. Love that. A lot of people said it reminded them of Alex Jones. It didn't really bother me that much, to be honest. He had a talk show in the comics, and it did remind me of that podcast that he had on Spider-Man from PS4. In fact, definitely you could see a little bit of influence from the Spider-Man PS4 game, even though the filmmakers have said it wasn't influenced by that. Come on, you just know those dudes are lying. The entire theater cheered when JJ showed up, me included, and I can't wait to see more from this Spider-Man in this universe. So tell me, what did you think about Spider-Man Far From Home? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What were your biggest problems with it? Put it in the comment section below. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show, and as always, if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.